me introduce myself. I'm Joe Grizzly, bitch.
What up, Militia? I mean Joe Grizzly, and when I'm not watching a sequel to one of the best horror movies released in the last 20 years, I'm at the Grizzly Cave, watching and reviewing movies while, of course, crushing beers. And I am back at the Grizzly Cave to bring y'all my review of the sequel that no one asked for, The Black Phone 2. So even though it was a sequel that no one asked for and no one expected, does it deliver? Is it a good continuation of one of the best horror movies released in the last 20 years? Let's find out. This is Grizzly Grade Reviews. Bad dreams haunt Gwen as she receives calls from the Black Phone and sees visions of 3 boys being stalked and murdered at a winter camp. When her and her brother Finn head to the camp in order to solve the mystery, they discover that the Grabber is back and has grown even more powerful in death. Now, when this movie was announced, I was like, what are they doing? How are they going to continue this story? Is it going to be a prequel? Like, what is going to happen? And my expectations were kind of low. They weren't non-existent, but they were kind of low because I am a huge fan of the first Black Phone movie. I thought it was one of the best movies of 2022, and in a stacked year, that is saying something because 2022, I've said it before, I'll say it again, is one of the best years in horror that we have ever gotten, especially in the last 20 years. So when they announced that this movie was getting a sequel, it just didn't make sense to me. And I was really worried that it was going to tarnish the legacy of that first film, which was a very good one-and-done contained story. And with Blumhouse's track record here of late, where they either bring out a lot of good movies and some bad ones, or they bring out a bunch of bad ones and maybe one good one, I was really worried on what they were going to do, if they were just going to completely shit the bed and mess this up. And then they released the first trailer. And in the first trailer shows us that the Grabber has now become this Freddy Krueger-esque entity in death. And I was very, very, very intrigued by that concept, and my excitement grew. But either way, it was still felt like it was something that was really forced, and it was something that, it was a sequel that we did not ask for. Nobody asked for this. So I went in with low expectations and was very reserved, even though I was hearing good things from other reviewers, and I came out really, really liking it. So starting out with the positives, the entire cast of this movie is great. There isn't a bad performance in the house, but the standouts are definitely the returning characters. You have Madeline McGraw returning as Gwen, which is the sister of Finney, the main character of the first movie, and she is the lead in this. Finn takes a back seat to her in this story, and she is fantastic, just like she was in the first film, where she kind of stole the show with her like real filthy mouth and her little smart little quips and stuff, and she is just like that in this movie, only more mature. I think the movie takes place 4 years after the events of the first film, and she is, I believe, around 15 years old, and she is now getting into the point in high school where she has that teenage angst, where she has like all these experiences that everyone goes through in high school, but hers is a little different because people have figured out that her visions are the reason why Finney was found. So now she is looked at as like a witch girl or someone who is a freak and all that. So she's really struggling with that as a character. And she has this boy in her class that really likes her. I think his name is Ernesto, and he is the brother of a kid from the first movie named Robin, who was one of Finn's friends. And their dynamic together is very, very sweet, and it's very genuine. I think that Madeline McGraw does a really good job of giving us a very wide spectrum of emotional ranges here, from being incredibly sad and heartbroken to being absolutely terrified, or on the other hand, where she is confronting the grabber and she is talking shit to the grabber. I think that she is doing a really good job of portraying all of those emotions in such a broad fashion. And as I said before, she is the central focus of this movie because she is the one who is having these visions of these children getting murdered at this winter camp. And her tenacity and her drive to solve this mystery and to put those souls to rest is one that is really cool to see, because she is not going to be deterred. She is on a mission and she is going to complete it. And Madeline McGraw does a really good job of portraying that. You got Mason Thames back as Finn, and this time around, where in the first film he was kind of the real timid kid that got beat up by bullies and stuff like that prior to his experience of being grabbed by the grabber, he ends up becoming a more hard-nosed, take no shit, darker character because of his experience. And one of the things that has kind of been wore out in horror films here recently is this big time focus on past trauma. And instead of like beating you over the head with this message and having it all in your face and stuff, the way that they handle it in this is very organic and very natural. If you're someone who went through what Finn went through, where you're being more no nonsense, more aggressive in how you handle people, more cautious in how you handle situations and how you just shut yourself off from the world, that is something that really does happen. And it's something that is very naturally done by Mason Thames in this movie. And just like in the first film, the brother-sister dynamic between Finney and Gwen is done very, very, very well in this. And that's something that I was happy to see continue in this movie. They never lost that dynamic, even though they are both older now, and they're both going through all the trials and tribulations of becoming a teenager and becoming older. And I thought that that was a good direction to take this. I didn't want this movie to open up with those two not liking each other or kind of leaving each other behind. I wanted that relationship to stay very connected, and they did a really good job of keeping that connection. And maybe one of the better parts of this cast is the role of their father, played by Jeremy Davies. His character has taken a drastic change, and it was really cool to see after the events of the first film for him to do this complete 180 as a character and actually develop and be like wanting to be a better person than what he was. Because in the first film, he was just this despicable, abusive drunk. And after the events of the first film, he is now taken up being sober and trying to be a good father to his kids. And that was really refreshing to see that happen. And Jeremy Davies does a really good job of taking us on that journey and continuing it in this film. And last but certainly not least, Ethan Hawke as the grabber. He is back, and he is more brutal than he has ever been. And I believe that with this performance, he was already kind of breaking through a little bit into modern horror icon status. But I believe after this performance, he is now solidified as a new modern horror icon. And I'm very happy that that's happening, because we need new icons. And as of right now, we only really have one, and that's Art the Clown. And to see the grabber's popularity grow in real time has been something that's been really cool to see. And it's all because of how Ethan Hawke portrays this character. He is a despicable, diabolical, just absolutely monstrous killer. And it's one of those things that these kind of people exist in real life. They may not be as grandiose as how the grabber is, but that was one of the things that made the Black Phone feel very grounded, even though it did have a supernatural element to it. The killer with the multiple mood swings and multiple personalities, the killer with the mood being portrayed with his mask and these little detachable pieces for his mask and stuff, the way that he tortures his victims psychologically before ultimately just brutally murdering them, that all carries over in this movie, only it's by way of a more supernatural element to now in this world. It is established that death is not the end, that death is one of those things that's like an in-between until your soul is put at rest, and the grabber's soul is not at rest, and it is back, and he is pissed off, and he is getting his revenge. And he is absolutely horrifying in this movie. His look, his demeanor, his actions in which he torments people from beyond the grave is just really, really well done. And I think it's all thanks to how much Ethan Hawke really cares about this character and how much body and soul that he is actually putting into this role. I think just like in the first movie, the cinematography is very good. It's got this dreary, snowy effect this entire time. There's literally at one point where it's just a blizzard, and those set pieces and settings are very well done and are very effective, because I'm not a very cold-natured person, but I can tell you when I was watching this movie, and that there's one point where they're literally driving through a blizzard, and it was so miserably cold looking that I actually got a little chilly, and I thought that was very well done if it got that kind of an effect out of me. Continuing to cinematography, the other thing that was really, really cool and really awesome was what Scott Derrickson did by integrating what he did in Sinister, as in when Ethan Hawke's character in Sinister, when he would watch these home movies or these snuff films of this killer killing all of these families, it would have that grainy Super 8 look to it. And in this movie, every time Gwen goes into the dream world, the film looks grainy and Super 8 looking. And I thought that the transition between both of those was very well done. It helped establish what is reality and what is dream. And it just looks creepy and looks awesome. I thought that integrating those, at first thinking about it, I didn't think it was going to work. It was going to be kind of jarring and be like, well, this is from Sinister and it don't really fit here. And I was completely wrong. It looked absolutely incredible. I think that the soundtrack in this movie is awesome. Not just the score, but the actual songs that they chose to go in this movie just fit so damn well. There's even one scene where when they're heading towards this camp to investigate all these visions and dreams that Gwen is having, where Pink Floyd's The Wall Part 1 comes on, and it just goes so well with the scene and the atmosphere in the movie, where it just has this really dark and brooding buildup of heading towards imminent danger. I thought that choice to use that instead of some paint by numbers 80s song that we hear in all of these 80s throwback style movies, I thought that was a great choice. I think that the choice to make the grabber a supernatural entity, a murderous soul that is not at peace but still wants to continue killing and tormenting people, whether it be real life people or the souls of the people that he has murdered, I thought that was an awesome choice. And yes, the parallels to Freddy Krueger and Nightmare on Elm Street are there, and some of them are very on the nose, but I felt like that it was so well done and done well enough and different enough that it kind of establishes itself as something different. It was unique enough to do that, instead of it being just a Nightmare on Elm Street ripoff or a Freddy Krueger ripoff. I think they did a really good job of kind of dissociating his powers from Freddy's. Like, he's not in here growing 100 feet tall. He's not making people walk like puppets with their arteries. He's not having his tongue come out of phone or anything like that. He's taken the rules established in the Black Phone universe, where calls from the supernatural can sometimes come through these payphones and stuff, and that's how he would communicate with people who are not dreaming. He would also it was like flipping through like memories of his and pulling people into those, or having the setting around them just be in a separate dream world where everything is essentially the same. The only thing that's different is you see the soul, you see the mangled bodies of his victims as well as him, and he looks completely different, and he looks almost the same, but there's little touches here and there that make him look super badass. For instance, there's a line that is said where hell is not hot, hell is ice cold. So on the mask, there's like frost on the mask. And he has like little attachments too on his body. Like, for instance, there's a point, you see it in the trailer, where he's ice skating. He's not really on ice skates. He has ice encased around his feet and shaped like blades that he is skating on. And I thought that that was really cool. And again, it was enough to separate him from Freddy Krueger. And that's what I wanted. I didn't want a blatant ripoff of Nightmare on Elm Street. And I think they did a good enough job to separate themselves from that. And to go along with this new set of powers, it offers a chance for him to be even more brutal. And what is especially crazy about this sequel is the brutality is up to 11. It's something that the first one could have maybe been a gateway horror movie, but this one is absolutely not for people who are trying to get into horror, because there is horrific acts of violence in this movie, and violence towards kids. And it's not done in this really distasteful way. Like, we don't see him actually in a full screen manner of him murdering these kids, but it's like in little jump clips and stuff and real close up, like he's holding a camera while he's doing it, kind of like how Sinister was. And I felt like that they did a good job with that, even though at some points in the movie the brutality is pretty shocking. I didn't think that they were going to go the distance that they did. There's one in particular where when it happened on screen, I was like, holy shit, I didn't think they would actually do that. But he's more brutal than he ever was in the first movie. He is completely unhinged, and he is very creative in how he torments his victims and how he goes after Gwen and torments her and harms her and other people around her from the dream world or from the spirit realm. And finally, I think the overall story and how they chose to continue this movie, I felt like they did a really good job. I didn't think there was anywhere to go with this, but if you were going to go in the direction of having the Grabber return without it being a prequel, I think that they did a good job with that. There was really no direction to go in, and somehow they found a way, and I felt like it was very commendable. Moving on to the mixed aspects, there is one thing that I wasn't a big fan of, but I didn't hate it. And that is a connection with the Grabber and some of the characters in the movie that was never established before that they did in this movie. I didn't really hate it, but I do feel like that it makes it gives a little too much away about the character of the Grabber. And when you do that, it's kind of like with a lot of people's gripes with how they handled Michael Myers from Halloween to Halloween 2. They expanded on his lore to the point that it makes him less scary or makes him less interesting as a character because they tied him to this or did that. And it wasn't a grave mistake that made me hate the movie, but I do feel like that it was a little too on the nose, if that makes any sense. Moving on to the negatives, I only have two really big negatives for this movie. Is that the first half of the movie really takes a while to get going, in the sense that we don't see the Grabber in the whole first half of the movie. And that was something that was really disappointing to me. And I know that at one point you kind of think that they're trying to make it this mystery that the Grabber is back. And I understand that they had to do that in that world in order to tell the story, even though we know that the Grabber is back. But it just took way too long to get there. And there's certain points in the movie where some characters come to this big realization, but it was kind of obvious for the audience the whole time. So not necessarily treating its audience like we're stupid, but it was something that it just felt like it wasn't necessary to take that long to build up to this confrontation. And to piggyback off of that, that made the pacing and the runtime seem a lot longer than what it was. This movie comes in under 2 hours, and the first half of the movie felt a lot longer than what it actually was. So The Black Phone 2 was a sequel that nobody asked for and that nobody thought could be pulled off. But As a big fan of the first one, I gave this one a shot and I actually really enjoyed it. I don't enjoy it near as much as I did the first one, but I feel like it was a pretty solid sequel and it was a pretty cool direction to take these characters in. So if you're a fan of the first one, you might be like me and you might like what they did with this, but you're still going to like the first one better. If you wasn't a fan of the first one and you give this one a shot, you might like this one more. But either way, I definitely encourage you to go see it because I thought it was pretty damn good. So with all that being said, The Black Phone 2 gets a 4 out of 5 and is Grizzly grade guaranteed. Go out to the theater, check it out, see if you like it. I know a lot of people might not like it, but I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty damn good. That's going to do it for this video. Thank you all so much for your continued support and patience. Without y'all, this channel isn't possible. And if you like this video, like it. And if you like it enough, please head over to the channel, hit the subscribe and bell button so you never miss a video. Also, please follow me on all social media platforms so you can get channel updates, movie news, and all forms of badassery. I think over here I've got my latest review of VHS Halloween, and right below it I believe is the playlist for Grizzly grade reviews. So go in there, check those out after you subscribe, and remember, I'm Joe Grizzly, bitch.